Let's start. My name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone, and this is the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa webinar updated till February 18th, 2026. And it's very important because today the government announced that there was an increase in the minimum salary, and that affects the financial threshold of the Digital Nomad Visa. A bit about Spainguru, 10 plus years helping expats and immigrants moving to Spain. 150,000 community members across Facebook groups. A weekly newsletter with 18,000 readers. It's free. You can join it today and opt out anytime. A YouTube channel with more than 1,000 videos, almost 9,000 subscribers, weekly immigration webinars like this one, and a huge digital nomad visa group with more than 20,000 members that I highly recommend you joining. As you can see, we have, together with Trustpilot and Google, we have almost 300 reviews. With almost 5 stars. Okay, only 3 of them are 4 stars. So you're in very good hands, in not only in my opinion, but in everyone else's opinion. Now, what the objectives of this webinar is, hopefully you will learn how to qualify under the 2026 rules, what documents you really need, how to apply from Spain and from a consulate, and how taxes work and how renewals work. The content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. The requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate requirements or the UGE requirements when you apply. Now, we're going to go through key terminology, the requirements, employee versus freelancers, income plus documents, applying from Spain versus a consulate, and renewals and compliance. Okay, those are the different chapters of this presentation. Some of the key terms you must understand is UGE, Unidad de Grandes Empresas, is the government unit that evaluates your digital nomad visa application. The NIE is the Número de Identificación de Extranjero. This is just a number, it's not the card. It's the ID number as a foreigner in Spain. The TIE card is the plastic card, which is the Tarjeta de Identidad Extranjero, which is your physical residency card where it states your residency status and your rights to work or not. Autónomo is the self-employed legal status in Spain, like 1099 in the USA or contractor. A1 or Certificate of Coverage, COC, it is a certificate issued by your home country Social Security that keeps you in home country Social Security as long as you have an agreement between your country and Spain. Now let's talk about applying from Spain versus a consulate, okay? So important, we mentioned the NIE. If you're applying from abroad, yes, at a consulate, you must first obtain the NIE number. This can take several weeks, if not months, depending on the consulate. This is something that is especially common for Filipinos who apply from Manila, okay? And usually you will get 1 year visa / residency once you get approved. If you're applying from Spain, the NIE is issued automatically together with the digital nomad visa approval. You don't need to apply separately or before for the NIE, right? And you can receive up to a 3-year residency permit if you apply from Spain, as long as your contract is open-ended. If the UGE doesn't respond to the application. Now let's talk about the 2026 update, okay? We have been or seen quite a lot of back and forth about the US certificate of coverage because at the beginning it was accepted, then it was no longer accepted in 2024, but then in April 2025, they started accepting it again. But in October, November 2025, not long ago, Spain briefly stopped accepting it again. And now in February 2026, we've seen many approvals again for W-2 workers from the US being accepted, but there's been some declarations or statements by the UGE directors stating that if the COC needs to be approved, you must show that your company is posting you in Spain for strategic reasons. The employer letter wording is critical to show this, okay? And the COC must align with the contract. If you miss the right wording, it could mean rejection, okay? So the COC still accepted, but you have to pay attention to the latest developments. if you want to reduce your friction or increase your chances of getting approved, a lot of people will switch from W2 employee to 1099 because the COC is very much under scrutiny later on. Okay, this is the situation as of today. Also, 2026 and also end of 2025, there's more documentation and more certificates and more apostilles are required by the UGE. There's stricter checks, especially for business owners, to prove that their company has real activity and professional experience. You know, you can apply either with professional experience or with studies. If you're applying with professional experience, now this experience needs to be backed by official evidence. The UGE now is much stricter, okay? And we're talking about a very recent um, statements from the director of the UGE, and they are creating a new monitoring unit, okay, that not only checks the paperwork for the initial applications, but also once you are approved, that you also observe what you promised, okay, so that also has an impact in the renewal. So more specialized review teams, stronger documentation checks, this reinforced quality control units, post-approval compliance checks, and increased fraud detection. There's been some cases of fraud. This is what the director of UGE mentions, and that has triggered more severe monitoring, okay? Now, before, only a few documents needed apostilles. So apostille is the official legalization of official certificates issued by other countries that are not Spain, but need to be presented to Spanish authorities. So you need to legalize them via an apostille if your country is part of the Hague Convention, or via the Ministry of Foreign Affairs if your country is not part of the Hague Convention. That could be the case of United Arab Emirates. Okay. Now, company registration certificates must be apostilled or legalized. Tax or social security reports used as work proof require apostille as well. If you're applying with spouse, with children, so marriage, birth certificate, civil partnership certificate for unmarried couples will also need apostilles. They always need it. Documents from outside of Spain, as I said, need to be legalized and apostilled. And if they're not in Spanish, you need to sworn translated by an official sworn translator. That is a translator that was appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If you need recommended ones, you can find them on spainguru.es. Of course, all this paperwork requires time, and you need to be organized, meticulous, and plan in advance. Now, specifically for business owners, like a lot of people apply with this structure, there's extra scrutiny, okay, about this structure. And I have recently released a video with Ainhoa Manero, expert immigration lawyer, who has dozens of approvals by business owners, but lately she got a denial, okay? And I have in this video, she proposes a solution to get the approval, but this is an ongoing case. The thing is that authorities identified certain cases of frauds where fake work contracts were submitted, companies were non-existent or zombie without any activity. We've seen agents or people who apply on behalf of applicants reusing documentations across clients and improper social security registration. So when this fraud is detected, it may happen, and it has happened, that the entire agent batch will be reviewed, applications can be canceled, and post-approval checks may trigger revocation. Okay, so these are also news in 2026. Okay, another thing that has been going on along the years since this very new visa has been approved or started is that there's been a lot of confusion about taxes, and particularly about the eligibility for the Beckham law or special tax regime, which is an amazing special treatment in terms of taxes, because it allows the applicant to pay only 24% flat tax rates over their worldwide employment income. You don't have to declare the wealth tax or pay the wealth tax for assets that are outside of Spain. You don't have to fill the 720 form declaring your overseas assets. So a lot of people thought that if they're applied with the digital nomad visa, you were automatically eligible for this. But no, the fact is that contractors are it's almost impossible to be eligible. Only employees moving to Spain may potentially be eligible for the special tax regime. Okay, so this is also something to have in mind. If you're a contractor, you will be under the ordinary regime. You will have to pay taxes with the normal progressive tax brackets. Other things that we've seen about the UGEs, they had unpredictable decisions. You need to expect that there are different decisions depending on the different case workers. If you gave the same file or the same applications to different people, some people would get approved, others wouldn't get approved. Rejections may happen even with strong applications. And if you're applying from Spain, every expert will tell you that it's much better to reapply rather than appealing a decision. Appealing a decision can take months, whereas reapplying, of course, it is bound to the 20 working days for administrative silence. So if you apply very fast in your 90 days that you can apply of legal, let's say, tourist Schengen visits, you can get your decision in the first month. If you get denied, you can change something in your filing, make it stronger, and reapply again. Okay, so that's a much better pathway. So this is important to have in mind. And also the calendar is important as well, because even if foreign offices will process applications all year round, it is true and it is known that they're understaffed next to the holiday seasons like August or Christmas. So decisions may be stricter or rushed if the applications happen during those time of the years. Now let's go through the requirements. And there was a big change announced today by the government. They gave the green light for an approval of an increase of the minimum salary in Spain. And as you probably know, the financial thresholds for this visa are linked to the minimum salary in Spain. So if it increases the financial threshold, okay? So it's going to increase 3.1%, and it will be retroactive from January 1st this year, right? So now if we do the calculation, if we do the math, you're going to see a table in the next slide. You need to make at least 2,850 euros per month. This answers, or it is 200% of Spain's 14 pays minimum salary, okay? And this figure is gross, or this figure is before tax, right? And also other criteria: you need to work remotely for non-Spanish companies or clients. Maximum 20% of your income may come from a Spanish company or client. Have either a university degree or at least 3 years of relevant professional experience. You need to provide a clean criminal record for the past 5 years, also from previous jurisdictions where you were living in. Prove your employer or clients have existed for at least 1 year. Confirm your work is performed remotely using digital tools, so not every kind of work will apply for this visa, okay? And also, they increased the requirements if you're applying as self-employed or autónomo or contractor. Since December 2025, proof of self-employment registration in the country of origin is required for these applicants, regardless of whether you apply from a consulate or from within Spain. So you should have been already enrolled or registered as a contractor in the country of origin before. Now, this is the table that I promised you before. Is the calculation for one applicant, couple, family of 3 and 4, for the minimum financial threshold for this visa. And I'm doing the calculation with the recent increase of minimum salary in 2026, which is 1,221 euros per month. If we calculate 14 payments, that is roughly over 17,000 euros per year, double the amount, and we divide by 12. The main applicant has to be making 2,849 euros. Coming with a spouse or couple, this is 75% of the annual minimum salary. That makes it close to 4,000 euros per month. And then every dependent, so children, for example, it is only 25% of that yearly amount, right? So there you have the different figures. Now, let's talk about this increase. We said 3.1% increase. This royal decree has not been approved yet, but it has been agreed. Okay, that is it's gonna happen. So these are the figures that I would have in mind if I had to apply soon. Okay. So yes, have that in mind that this was an increase, and this basically happened today, right? So very, very fresh news. Now, remember, and we mentioned, amounts are gross before taxes and expenses. If self-employed income must be shown before deducting costs, Okay, so a lot of people ask, like, are these numbers after tax or after cost, etc.? No, these are gross numbers. Okay, now savings may help support your case but cannot replace consistent income. Okay, this is a visa that is based in active recurrent income, although many people are slightly below the threshold and want to use savings. And there is no rule, there's nothing that states how much percentage or ratio or amount can be used as savings to complete the financial threshold. So different experts in the groups mention maximum 200 euros per month, maximum 450 euros per month, but the calculation has to be done over a 3-year period if you're going or you're seeking approval for a 3-year period, right? So you need to complete that with savings. Right now, if you have to use more than that amount, probably you would be crossing a certain line that, as I say, it is not in any law. It is based in, let's say, jurisprudence, if you wish, or experts who talk about what they do with their customers. Now, income must be documented through contracts, pay slips, invoices, and bank statements. So we mentioned maximum 20% of your income may come from Spain or not. It could be 100% income from outside of Spain. Now, let's talk about the checklist. Okay, so in order to apply for the DMV, you'll need a signed letter from your employer or main client confirming your role, title, job description, pay in euros, remote work authorization from Spain, and confirmation the arrangement is long term. Your contract, ideally without a fixed end date, because if you're applying from Spain, that will grant you the possibility to obtain the residency permit for an initial period of 3 years. Now, if you have a contract that is just 1 year, they will give you 1 year in the best of cases. Last 3 months of stamped and or signed personal bank statements showing income, last 3 months of payslips and invoices, company certificate with apostille now, proving your employer or client has existed for at least 1 year, proof of qualifications or 3+ years of relevant experience, criminal background check and signed declaration, private health insurance. In some cases, we're going to talk about that. So in most cases, you don't need a private health insurance, but in some you need. Passport, application form, payment receipt, and photo. Each document must be sworn translated when it's an official document and apostille legal or legalized if required. I have a table that shows all these documents and tells you which one needs to be apostille, which one needs to be sworn translated, and I will show it to you a bit later. Okay. Now, if you're applying as an employee W-2 and A1 certificate insights, okay, this is something that we mentioned, okay, a little bit. But basically, your employer must confirm your remote status and your job duties. W-2 form can support your income, but it's not enough by itself. You will need the certificate of coverage to prove you're paying Social Security in your home country. Without this certificate, or A1, okay, for UK or people working in other EU countries, Spain will require your employer to register for Social Security in Spain, or instead that you become autónomo or freelancer in Spain. Okay. Some experts also mention that they also add a signed letter confirming no impact on Spain's labor market. Now, some people have the flexibility or versatility to either apply as an employee or self-employed autónomo, and both situations have pros and cons. This is a very long and detailed table, and I think it's very useful. If you are in this situation, read it, because you can see the pros and cons, and probably this can help you design your application strategy. As I mentioned before, I will send you the recording. You can watch this later on if you are in this situation. Let's continue talking about the certificate of coverage. We mentioned the US certificate of coverage situation, the back and forth. UK certificate of coverage has been approved and accepted for a long time now, since the beginning of the visa. Nothing is changing. Also, other certificates of coverage like Canada, Russia, Brazil, we've seen that they have been accepted. Okay, so you have to be careful, because even if there is an agreement between Spain and those countries, you need to understand whether in reality they are being accepted. Some key points about these certificates is that they must cover the full duration of your initial visa. Okay, otherwise you would be in a situation in which your visa is longer or residency is longer and your certificate of coverage expires. If you're in this situation, forget that your visa is longer or residency is longer. You will need to design a strategy to have a valid residency permit to continue with an interrupted legal residency in Spain. Okay, so one of the strategies or one of the pathways that many people choose is once their certificate of coverage expires, they switch to a autonomous status or self-employed in Spain or other visa pathways. Very important, it has to be apostille and sworn translated if it's not in Spanish. Okay, and also remember it takes time to get these certificates, weeks, if not months in advance, so plan accordingly. Now, we mentioned that there is the option that the employers or companies abroad may register in Spain and pay your social security in the payroll in Spain. But is this a viable option? Well, it is complex and a costly process. So most companies will prefer that remote contractors or consultants, so that you switch to that status rather than opening or having a Spanish payroll compliance. So this is one of the realities that is happening, that this option is probably the least viable of the three. Now, if you go self-employed, if you become autonomo, right, you will have to pay Spain's social security every month, okay? And also you will have to pay your annual tax declarations, but not only these ones, but also on a quarterly basis. You will have to pay some of your income tax on a quarterly basis, and then you will pay the difference in the annual stance. And also you will have to file or declare your VAT and eventually pay it, although you probably won't gather so much VAT if you have customers outside of Spain, because normally you wouldn't charge VAT to those kind of customers, but still you will have to file if you have some, let's say, income from Spain. Now, let's talk about the timings on how to register for Autonomo in case you decide to switch to Autonomo. Okay, so as we mentioned before, now the authorities not only they will ask you to register in Spain very quickly, but also they're asking for proof that you were already registered as contractor in your country. Okay, now if you get your digital nomad visa from a consulate, you will have 30 days to complete the process after the arrival. Okay, and if you obtain your digital nomad visa from Spain, the residency starts the day of approval, and after that day you will have roughly 1 month to register as autonomo. Okay, you have to do it as soon as possible. This is what the regulation says. They don't establish specific time frames, but the UGE is watching, and you may have problems if you don't do it as soon as possible. Okay, so think about your budget. You will have to have payments for the social security that normally start at 80, 90 euros per month during your first year in Spain as an autonomo. Then normally will raise to 300 euros depending on your level of income. Okay, and then you will have to regulate that yourself every year, depending on your level of income. If you for some reason missed the level of regulation, let's say if you were paying 300 euros per month but your income was too high and you should have been paying 600, yes, then on January or February the following year the social security sends you a letter saying like, sorry, but you've been underpaying, you owe us all this money. Okay, so this is the situation now, and it is changing also as we speak, because they are working on a system that will regulate your payment automatically. You don't choose anything, but depending on what you declare, what you are filing, they will increase the social security or reduce it accordingly. Okay, and also another thing that you need to have in mind with your budget is the accounting fees. Many people ask in the group like, should I declare my own taxes? Is this doable, etc.? In my humble opinion, don't do it. It's very complex. It's hard to be updated. It's hard to keep up. And as some people say, the tax authorities in Spain are probably regarded as the best tax office in the world. Okay, so nothing escapes them, and it is very complicated. So in my humble opinion, you should go with a gestor or tax accountant. You can find my recommendations on spainguru.es, and spend more time in your business rather than spending it in these tax admin activities. Okay, now another big question that people ask, if you're going autonomo, yes, some people unfortunately approach gestores or tax accountants who are not very familiarized with the case scenario of a digital nomad visa holder. So they think, these gestores, that you need to obtain your residency card before you register as autónomo, which normally could be a big blocker because there's unfortunately not too many appointments out there. There's a big bottleneck there, especially in regions like Valencia. And it takes several weeks, if not months, to get an appointment to go to the national police station to get your residency card. So basically, you have to register as autónomo before, as soon as possible, as they say, even if you don't have the residency card. And you perfectly can do it, and most people do it this way. And if you don't do it, you could be in trouble. So another one that people ask is, can a criminal record affect the application? And the answer is yes, of course. You must provide a criminal record certificate for every country where you lived in the last 5 years. Even minor offenses can trigger delays or rejections, but Spanish authorities will generally look for serious criminal convictions, fraud, drug-related offenses, repeated offenses, and this could be a straight denial. Okay. Now, if you have something, if it's a serious, let's say, crime, let's call it that way, and it should have been expunged in your home country, or it should have been expunged or deleted in the parallel or same level crime in Spanish law, your lawyer could make the case that that record should have been deleted before and therefore not considered. Okay, so if you're in this situation, and this happened long time ago. Now, if it's small misdemeanors like driving under the influence years ago, smoking pot many years ago, etc., they may be overlooked, but it's analyzed on a case by case, and it will depend on the official reviewing your case. Okay, so that's important. And once you also provide the criminal background checks, you will also, it's also necessary that you sign a declaration confirming that there's no pending criminal charges. Okay, especially considering the period in between the background check or police record and the date of application. Okay, now we mentioned that there's two options to apply: option A, a university diploma, or option 2 or B, at least 3 years of personal experience. For university diploma, it must be legalized and officially translated. Degrees must be graduate or postgraduate level from recognized institutions and related to your current job. If you're applying with 3 years of professional experience, they must be directly related to remote work you'll be doing in Spain and must be supported with documents such as employer or client letters, social security or tax reports, and invoices. You need to show invoices, contracts, or proof of services delivered. So now experience must be backed by official government's evidence whenever possible. Okay, and depending where you were performing that experience or those jobs, which country, etc., and the type of relationship that you had, certain official documents may be supporting that experience, like social security certificates, work history, tax payments, etc., etc. Also, for proving the experience, you need to show a detailed CV aligned with the application, client letters confirming scope and dates, official documents, as we mentioned before, like tax filings or social security records, invoices, bank proof, and clear link between past experience and current role. So everything has to match, everything has to have a certain narrative, and everything has to, you have to make it easy and clear for the official to understand your job evolution and why it all matches together. Okay, so another one that people ask, and this is a good perk of this visa, is that you can bring your family, right? So let's talk about the rules for spouses and partners, right? So you can include spouse or legally registered partner, children under 18, adult children too, so over 18 and until certain ages and conditions, and parents. Now, if you include a partner or spouse, you must provide a marriage certificate, okay, a new original copy that is valid. Okay, so generally I think it's 6 months validity for the digital nomad visa, or if you're a married couple, civil partnership certificate. Okay, and always sworn translated, and also proof of shared finances in case that you are applying with an married couple, or cohabitation. And for unregistered couples, okay, like pareja de hecho or stable couples, provide documents proving cohabitation for at least 1 year, okay, like, and providing documents like joint lease agreements where both names appears, joint bills, shared bank accounts. Having children together will help, but the requirement of cohabitation still will be needed. And of course, the more people you apply with, the more the financial threshold that you need to comply with too, as we saw in the table before. Now, if you're bringing children, adult dependents, and elderly parents, there's several rules. For minor children, you need birth certificate required. Again, valid for 6 months. It needs to be a new original copy, apostilled by the country or state that issue it, and sworn translated if it's not in Spanish. Proof of financial support and school plans is helpful as well. If you're applying with adult children, that is 18 plus, but under 26, must show full-time studies, financial dependence, proof of living with parents, also helpful certificate of single status and proof of not working to show that the child is still in the same family unit, okay? And if they are more than 18, and also over 26, only allowed if they are medically and incapably dependent, providing official incapacity documentation. For adopted children, include the court ruling confirming legal guardianship or adoption, and for parents or in-laws, this is also something that you need to prepare before applying, okay? Because you need to show that they are financially dependent on you, okay? So this needs to be proven that it's a real dependence, either financial or physical, okay? So you need to show bank transfers to support this elderly person or medical dependency, okay, certificates, and every case will be assessed individually, okay? And often will require a notarized declaration and additional income, of course. Now, some people apply before and they want their dependents to be added later on. This is possible. If members apply later, okay, extra documentation will be required. If you're applying as self-employed, you must be fully registered first as autónomo before they can apply. And of course, this can take time. Dependents can successfully apply while still in their home country. Used to be believed that they had to be in Spain, but it's not the case. Okay, but still something important, they might still need Schengen visa to enter Spain for the appointment. Okay, this is important. Even if the main applicant has been approved for the DMV, maybe they also need to get the Schengen visa in case they are passport holders of a country that requires a Schengen visa. And in order to enter Spain, you need to get, let's say, an activation. So dependents approved from abroad must still activate the residency visa, which is a type D visa at a consulate before entering Spain, okay? And the consulate will issue a certificate called family member of an international teleworker. Do you need private health insurance, okay? So generally no, okay? But there are some cases in which you need, right? So when is it not required? When either you're applying as an employee or as a contractor or autónomo. As a contractor or autónomo, you don't need a private health insurance because, I mean, if you want, you can get it, but you don't need it as a requirement for the visa because you will be paying Social Security once you become autonomous in Spain, and that will give you public healthcare coverage, public one. If you're applying as an employee, it will depend on the type of certificate of coverage that you are showing, because some certificate of coverage don't include healthcare entitlement, or it is not recognized in Spain. So you need to evaluate that. In the case that the healthcare is not recognized from Spain, then you will need to get a private health insurance that has to be compliant via certain conditions like zero co-payments, zero deductibles, comprehensive coverage valid throughout Spain, and minimum has to be for 1 year. So normally these certificates, the certificate of coverage from the health insurance companies must be paid 1 year in advance in order to issue this documentation that proves that you will be covered. Another one is that even if you apply with a certificate of coverage being an employee, including healthcare, if you're bringing family members, they almost always need private coverage unless you become autónomo. Again, if you're autónomo, there's no doubt that you don't need private healthcare. So these are the different combinations, okay? Remember that if you want to stay in Spain for the long term, so that is after 5 years of legal residency, you can then be eligible for the long-term residency, which is much better than the digital nomad residency. It is much better because there's less minimum stay requirements. There are no financial requirements for the long-term residency. You can be outside of Spain for a longer time. It is much better, right? So if you plan to be for the long term in Spain, this should be one of your objectives, unless you are part of any of the 2-year fast-track countries like Ibero-American countries or Philippines, that only after 2 years of legal residency, you can already apply for the Spanish passport, okay, which is even higher in hierarchy than the long-term residency, right? And still keep your original passport, right? If you're not in this case, long-term residency would be the way to go. And you need to apply via, let's say, complying with certain requirements. The biggest one is you must avoid gaps in legal residency, otherwise the clock go back to zero. Okay, so 5 years of uninterrupted legal residency. You must avoid gaps in health coverage. Okay, and this is also another little trap. If you're applying from Spain and you get your visa from Spain, the residency starts the day you get the approval. And if you were applying as autónomo and you didn't have healthcare coverage at the time of approval, then the clock gets to zero. Let's say you lose all, let's say, those weeks or months until you get access effectively to the public healthcare, because that's a gap in healthcare coverage, right? So people also in that situation, even if they get public healthcare coverage, they decide to get a compliant private health insurance, so that time also counts towards the 5-year residency, right? So have that in mind, okay? And not only these requirements, you need also a minimum stay requirement. You can maximum be outside of Spain for 10 months in the previous 5 years before applying the long-term residency. Those months don't need to be consecutive, but never more than 6 months at once. And that threshold can be extended for a few more months if you can prove that you had to be outside of Spain for work reasons, but they're very, very strict, and it is not easy to get that extension approved, right? In case you need health insurance that is compliant for any residency or visa, I recommend that you work with an experienced partner that I have, who is exclusive agent of Adesla, which is probably the best value for money for coverage in Spain. Adeslas, it is the largest company with 30% of the market. And the good thing about working with Carlos in this case is that he's also an expert immigration lawyer. He also processes digital nomad visa and knows the ins and outs of this process as well. So he knows perfectly and exactly your use case, and can, of course, give you the best options. Now, let's talk about more things, some extras, entry stamps, apostings, and translations. This main thing may look like small details, but it's important to observe them, right? First of all, if you're applying from Spain, you need to prove that you enter Spain at a certain date. So either you show a stamp in the passport, or now they are rolling out a new entry-exit system to be rolled out until April 2026 in all the airports in the Schengen area, which is a group of 29 countries internally borderless in Europe. Okay, so you need to prove your legal entry, right, in order to apply for this visa. What happens if you enter Spain from another Schengen country, where chances are that you didn't cross an immigration control? For example, if you fly from Frankfurt in Germany to Madrid in Spain, you will not have an immigration control. So there's no proof that you enter Spain on a certain date. So the best way to prove that entry will be to get a declaración de entrada or entry declaration at a national police station, either at the airport, at the train station where you arrived, or crossing the border from France, for example, or from Portugal by land. You have 72 hours to do it, but the best is to do it from a police station that is close to this or in the airports, because otherwise they don't know what you're talking about. This declaración de entrada is a one-page document where it says like, oh, you enter Spain on this date, they will stamp it, sign it, and that's a proof of entry in Spain. Talking about apostilles, as we said, they are needed for official documents from abroad, and that includes criminal records, birth certificates, company documents. We're going to see the list now. Sworn translations. Always when the documents are not in Spanish, you need to sworn translate them, or general or normal translation using Google or ChatGPT in some cases for the CV, for example. Always have in mind another detail, that your CV should match your documented experience, and all the application form must be fully completed and signed, and any errors may cause delays or rejection. So you need to be very careful and meticulous. And this is the table that I was promising before, with a list of documents, and either if they need apostille or sworn translation or simple translation, you can see there all the list. You can watch this list later on the recording that I will send you on YouTube. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube right now and you want to like this video and presentations, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions, please comment below. We mentioned before that this visa is based on active remote income, but you can still top up with savings in order to meet the threshold. Okay. So when does the people generally use the savings situation or use them as a tool to comply? Okay. When the income is slightly below the required threshold, if you're bringing multiple dependents, experts have also mentioned that the larger the family, let's say, the more open the authorities are to consider savings to complete the threshold. If you're self-employed with variable monthly income, big variations, okay? So those are the situations, right? How and what do you count as savings? You need to prove them via bank statements with your name, can be fixed terms deposits or investment accounts, but you need to prove with certificates that they're readily available, liquid, okay, without penalties, right? So that it is almost like having cash, and proof of consistent ownership and access. So more documentations with that. We also mentioned the possibility to apply from Spain or from a consulate abroad. Definitely, there are more pros about applying from Spain rather than from the consulate. Some people don't have the option to get the Schengen visa before. This could be a reason why to apply from a consulate, or for comfort of being at home for a few more months. But generally, it is much better to apply from Spain. This is what people and experts recommend because, first of all, you enter, you apply directly online. You don't need to apply for an appointment at a consulate, which can be a huge bottleneck. The process is much more streamlined if you're applying from Spain directly to UGE portal rather than the consulate, that they have crazy interpretations, a lot of variations. You don't need a medical certificate or income tax return if you apply from Spain, but consulates may ask for it. And the approval, this is the biggest one, probably. If you show an indefinite or open-ended contract, you can get residency for up to 3 years instead of 1. In the consulate is maximum 1, regardless of the type of contract. And you get a guarantee that you get approved if there is an administrative silence after not responding after 20 working days. And there should be a faster turnaround of 1 to 2 months. And many consulates, I hear like more than 5 months sometimes. There's some crazy horror stories about the timings, right? Now, there are a few cons of applying from Spain. First of all, you have a strict 90-day window to do it. Okay, so the Schengen rules, the 90 and 180 days rolling period. So outside of that period, you can't apply and you need to leave. And you will have to get your entry proof, as we mentioned before. And a bad one, in a way, is that you get your residency starting the day that you get the approval. With that problems, those problems that we mentioned before, you cannot really choose when to start it. And that's how it works. I have asked a poll. I did a poll in a group and asked how many people were applying from Spain versus consulate abroad. It was roughly 20% of people apply from abroad versus 80% apply from Spain in the group. And the timeline for applying from within Spain generally would look like you prepare your documents. It would take you 1 to 3 months just to gather the documents. Okay, of course, the planning part takes longer. Then once you have everything and it's valid and it's official, and then you have everything sworn translated and apostille, you travel to Spain, right? You enter Spain, get a proof of entry in Spain. You apply with the digital certificate or someone applies on your behalf at the OGE portal. You submit the application immediately after, and you wait for resolution, as we said, maximum 20 working days, and you hopefully receive your residency, hopefully with a validity of 3 years. That's how it would look. Now, if you're working with individuals rather than with companies, is that good? Is it possible? Is it a bad thing? Now, that's okay, right? Of course, authorities prefer that you work with companies and the least customers better, because there's less documentation, because you need to prove all the documentations for each of your customers. But still, if you have smaller clients, that's workable. That's fine. It is legally possible, but there is also higher risk. Okay, you will face additional scrutiny, and you will have to show invoices with the client names, proof of regular payments, written confirmation from client about the work you do. For multiple smaller clients, showing consistent income across several months. Avoid contracts that suggest you are doing work for Spanish-based individuals unless clearly allowed. Okay, and applications are generally considered stronger when income is paid by registered companies. Some people also ask if they could apply when they had customers, NGO customers, and these are acceptable if they operate like a company and showing consistent activity, legal status, and financial transactions, just as any other company, right? We mentioned before that there is a big bottleneck about TA appointments or residency cards, especially in Valencia. There's been a big delay here. But not obtaining the appointment and not having the residency card should not be considered that you are in an illegal status. Okay, so of course, if your visa, your residency has been granted, you're not illegally in Spain. It's just that you don't have, let's say, the physical proof. And all the authorities perfectly understand that there is a big appointment problem, and that has been happening. If you search, the newspapers for many years ago, 2010, 2005, you will see the T appointments has been a mess in Spain for decades, literally. But yes, you have to fight to get that appointment. So there's a lot of tips on the groups, and people tell you like to check daily, that they open up at 9 in the morning until 2 p.m. Every 15 minutes, there is an update of the system, etc., etc. So there's many, let's say, ways or tricks or cheat codes that people share on how they got the appointments, and also open up your flexibility, geographical flexibility, to choose different police stations in the same region where you live. If you can, you could use a gestor, okay? You can find a service for TA appointments, TA procedure on Spainguru of a recommended partner if you need. Of course, you have to pay for it, whereas if you do it yourself, will be free. And there's a trick here. Madrid and Barcelona often is easier for certain reason, okay? But this is important tip. Start looking for appointments as soon as you enter Spain, okay? Even if you didn't apply yet, start searching for appointments if you can. But as I mentioned, Madrid and Barcelona, you can ask special appointments via the UGE portal. They have special, let's say, office for TA appointments in Madrid and Barcelona for people who are applying via the UGE. And the cool thing about the Madrid and Barcelona appointments is that they don't require empadronamiento. What is empadronamiento? It is the registration of your rental contract or wherever you're living, if you're living with family or friends, if you bought a house and you show your property deeds, okay? But you show this documentation to the city hall where you live, and they give you a proof of address called empadronamiento. And most police stations will require an empadronamiento as a proof of address. Not all of them, okay? But it will be very useful to have. Now, the cool thing about doing it in Madrid and Barcelona via the UGE is that they don't ask for empadronamiento. So you could be living anywhere in Canary Islands, Ceuta, Melilla, Mallorca, whatever, and then you fly to Barcelona or to Madrid. After you get the appointment, you stay in a hotel, you go to the appointment, they don't ask you for empadronamiento, they don't know if you live in any of those places, and they will give you the TA card, and that can help you. So I call that the TA hack, right? Now let's talk about the taxes and Social Security, right? So what will you pay in Social Security if you're applying as an autónomo? Okay, year 1 versus 2, you start with 80 euros, 100 euros per month. We mentioned that. But some and many regions have something called the quota cero, okay? And that for the first, for people who register first as an autónomo, after the first year, you claim back those payments, right? So you pay more or less like 1,000 euros, and you claim that, and they pay you those 1,000 euros back just to support your activity, okay? And that happens, for example, in Madrid. It happened to me as an autónomo here in Andalusia, so you get it back, right? And then the contributions will increase according to the level of income. Now, the Social Security payments give you access to Spanish public healthcare system, subsidized medicines, retirement, disability coverage, parental leave, sickness benefits, pension in Spain, etc., right? So it is very powerful, but also you need to have that into account in your budgeting because they are not particularly cheap. Now, talking properly about taxes, because Social Security is one thing, taxes is another, really. And specifically about the income tax, there's different types of income tax. There's ordinary income, you have investment income, but ordinary income, among ordinary income, you have employment income or salary, you also have capital gains tax, etc. But in ordinary income, you have progressive tax brackets that range from 19% to 47%. These are the famous ones, not the only ones. Many many taxes have progressive tax brackets, like capital gains tax. You have the, for example, wealth tax, solidarity tax. They all have progressive tax brackets. But a big question that people, when they see this, right, you can see that the fifth bracket is between 60,000 euros and 300,000 euros, and that's 45%, right? It's very common that people under the digital nomad visa make an income level that falls somewhere into that bracket, right? And they ask themselves, oh, damn, I will pay 45%. The truth is that it doesn't work that way, right? You will be paying an effective tax rate of between 35 to 36%, which is not low, but it's not crazy high. It's 45%, because the way it works is that for the first 12,450 euros that you make, that are taxable income, you will pay 19% tax. For the following 7,500 euros, you will pay 24%. For the following 15,000 euros, you will pay 30%. Therefore, you'll be paying, let's say, an average or a median of all those tax rates, making it the effective tax rates to go lower to 35 to 36% for 100K income. Sorry, I didn't mention the 100K case. Okay, so if you're making 100K, that falls into the fifth tax bracket, and people think that. But if you were making 100K taxable income, you wouldn't pay 45%. You would pay around 36% with these progressive tax brackets, right? We also mentioned that autonomous, not only they have to pay annual taxes, but they also have to file and pay quarterly taxes, right? So normally you will start paying 15, 20%, whatever, there are some rules of what percentage you need to advance in the quarterly taxes, okay, which I don't really remember now. But you can basically, for you, whatever you are invoicing, you pay in advance the income tax on a quarterly basis, and then in the annual filing, which is June 30th, the following year from the tax year we're talking about, you will be paying the difference, right? And if you're under the digital nomad visa, you will be making more money, and for sure you will be over the 20% effective tax rate. So always you will have to pay. And also quarterly, you will have to pay or file your VAT. There's also an annual VAT declaration at the end of January. And if you're having intracomunitarian operations, if you're selling or have customers in other places of European Union, also there's another one that you need to file. That's why you need a gestor or professional that does that for you, okay? There's also another form, and I mentioned it, especially now we are on February 18th. By March 31st, once you become Spanish tax resident, you need to declare your overseas assets via the 720 form. This is not a tax per se, it's an informative form. So whatever assets you have outside of Spain, could be real estate, banks, investment, etc. There's different categories. If any of the categories is over 50,000 euros, you have to declare everything in that category. For example, you have two bank accounts with 25,000 euros in each outside of Spain, that is 50,000 euros, you need to declare it. And then you have to declare it every year if there are more than 20,000 euros variations by category, of there are assets closures or changes, right? So this is something that you have to have in mind. Remember, you can find recommended gestores or tax advisors. And if you want to know more about taxes, remember, I'm not a tax advisor, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but just like this webinar, I will try to give you an overview of Spanish taxes, not only for digital nomads, but about everything. And I have this free webinar that now I'm having on a monthly basis. And of course, it's free. And of course, I send you the recording once you register, and you can watch the recording of previous tax webinars. I had one last week that you can watch already on Spainguru's YouTube channel. Now let's talk about visa renewal. Now, the visa renewal timeline is that normally, if you're applying from outside of Spain, you will get it for 1 year. What happens if you want to convert that into a 3-year limit? Now there's news about this, and it is no longer guaranteed. Okay, the safer way to get 3 years in advance is to apply directly from Spain. Yes, and as I said, one of the biggest advantages of doing it from Spain with open-ended contract is you get it for 3 years, and then you renew for 2 more years, making it 5 years, perfect for the long-term residency, right? Now, remember, you need to apply for the residency card once you get the digital nomad visa approved, and the start date of that residency card should match the day in which you were approved if you apply from Spain, right? Or from the entry in Spain within the visa validity if you got it from outside of Spain. But basically, it starts on a specific date, and the initial, then you have to see the expiration date, depending for how long the residency was given for. If it's only 1 year, if it's 2 years, if it's 3 years. For example, if you have a certificate of coverage of 2 years, maybe they give it to you for 2 years, even if the contract is longer, right? So you see the expiration date. When do you have to renew? 60 days before the expiration date, and up to 180 days after the expiration date. But you could face fines or something like that if it's done after the visa expiration. So also, it is highly recommended that you begin the renewal 60 days before the expiration, because if anything goes wrong, if anything, if you need extra documentation, etc., you still have days in order to renew or to apply for the renewal again. So don't wait until the last minute. I mentioned before slightly that certain countries have agreements with Spain, and maybe it's a better pathway to stay in Spain to get the Spanish passport before the long-term residency. This is the case of the countries in red: Ibero-American countries, Philippines, Andorra, Portugal, Guinea Equatorial. All these countries, or passport holders from these countries, can apply for the Spanish citizenship after only 2 years of legal residency. The digital nomad visa counts, of course, and they cannot be more than 90 days outside of Spain each of the 2 years before applying for the Spanish citizenship. Okay. Otherwise, if you are a holder of a passport of other countries, they're in gray, like USA, Australia, Canada, UK, you have to wait 10 years, right? Now, if you apply with, if you are dual citizen, for example, you're American, you apply for a DMV with your American passport, but you still have, for example, your Mexican passport by origin, or you have the Puerto Rican citizenship, or any of the those countries in red, you can still use that second passport, even if your residency was obtained by another passport that didn't benefit from the 2-year fast track. You can still use the other one in order to benefit and apply. Okay, but always seek legal advice by expert immigration lawyers. You can find them on Spainguru. Now, what's different when you renew your visa? Now the visa renewals are almost like applying for the visa again. Okay, and these are also new and fresh requirements for the renewals. What we're seeing from the authorities, they are asking that you are a tax payer, so they will ask for a Spanish tax declaration, Modelo 100, which is income tax, IRPF, proof of fiscal residence in Spain, Spanish bank statements. They want to see activity. They want to see evidence that you are living in Spain, Social Security compliance, and UGE is verifying that you are actually paying taxes, that you're truly a resident in Spain, and that you have complied with everything that you said you were going to do post-approval. Okay, like for example, registering as autónomo, right? So renewal is no longer a formality; it's almost like applying again. But now they check whether you truly lived and paid taxes in Spain. Some of the common renewal issues are income drops before the required level, freelancers fail to show consistent activity, delays with paperwork or expired documents, new apostille requirements. So a lot of people applied when the rules were more loose, okay, in terms of apostilles, and now they're getting stricter and they forget to be updated. So always be part of the community. Always use expert legal help who are updated, because this visa is changing all the time. It is really, really hard to keep up. And of course, they will look for gaps in health coverage, as we mentioned before. So it's also something to consider. Okay. We mentioned the 5-year requirements for the long-term residency, common mistakes, gaps in residency permits or health coverage, okay, or not having complied with the maximum time outside of Spain the previous 5 years. And remember that there are minimum stay requirements to apply for the Spanish passport as well. Tips for a small renewal: be organized, keep documents organized from day one. That is income statements, invoices, client letters, social security payment records if self-employed. Monitor your income to ensure you meet the threshold every month. Update the empadronamiento if you move, and that takes time. For example, in Malaga here, it takes 3 months to get a new empadronamiento. Okay, once you get it, it's easy to get a certificate, but getting empadronado, it takes 3 months. So it is pretty crazy how slow the administration is. So have that in mind. Okay, and also remember that not all the rental contracts work for empadronamiento. That is unfortunately a case-by-case situation depending on the ayuntamiento or city hall, but generally they ask for rental contracts of minimum 6 months. Okay, so don't think that having an Airbnb will be enough to get an empadronamiento, right? So getting an empadronamiento is a little project in itself as well. Okay, so start also coming back to the renewal, start gathering documents for 3 months before expiration, get a new background check now from Spain with no pending legal issues, of course. We mentioned the creation of a quality control unit in the UGE, and they will now verify Spanish Social Security registration, proper autonomous setup, the COC validity or A1. Okay, as I said many times, they give you for 3 years, but the A1 is maximum 2 years, so it has to be valid at the time of the renewal. Otherwise, you should have had to find another residency type, okay, or switch to autonomo or use other pathways. Okay, they will see that the income remains above the threshold and administrative silence cases were legitimate. Okay, so this is important to have in mind for the renewal. We're getting to the end of the presentation. Okay, what to do when the A1 or certificate of coverage is expiring. You have basically you have several options. Either you apply for a renewal, which is not always granted, almost never actually. Switch to autonomo. This is a common one, and register to Spanish Social Security, but you need to do it before actually the certificate of coverage expires. Otherwise, you could have a gap in residency, right? In legal residency, or you could convince the employer to register for Spanish Social Security, but that is very, very unlikely. You could leave Spain temporarily and then apply again, but that will reset the clock towards the long-term residency, and or consider other immigration pathways such as arraigos. Okay, you need to be regular to apply for arraigos. Only after 2 years you can apply. But if you have been in Spain 2 years, it doesn't matter if you are legal. Okay, but if you are irregular, you could apply for arraigo. You could switch to non-lucrative residency. That is another one. If you have passive income, savings, etc., you could go to an ordinary work permit as autonomo or as sponsored by a company. So you have to review this and have a strategy set in place, hopefully helped by an immigration expert who can make sure that everything is done correctly. Okay, so that is also something to have in mind. Never think that if you have an expired certificate of coverage but you have longer term visa, you are in the right situation. No, that is not the case. Now we're finishing here. Remember that you can use Spainguru.es for free. Join the newsletter. You can opt out anytime. 18,000 readers. I send it every Monday. Keep you on the loop with all the news, articles, most watched videos of the week, new partnerships, new webinars. So definitely a lot of going on. YouTube channel with almost 9,000 subscribers, more than 1,000 videos. A quarter or a third of them are about the digital nomad visa. And then, of course, investigation, blog posts with more than 2,000 articles, 7 monthly webinars, and a huge community with the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa group that you haven't joined. If you haven't joined yet, it is a big one, very active, 20,000 members. And of course, I have vetted my personal recommended partners over the years. You have immigration lawyers, tax experts, cross-border financial planners. You have sworn translators, apostille services in the UK and the US, NIE and TIE procedures as well. They can do them for you. Compliant health insurance, and so many more services. If you are moving or staying in Spain, you can always reach out to me at hello@spainguru.es. I always answer my emails or your emails, and it makes me also very happy to receive one. And yes, stay in touch. And remember, the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal advice. I'm not an immigration lawyer. I'm not a tax advisor. The requirements listed here are not official. Always check the official requirements. Now let's go to the Q&A session. But if you had to leave earlier for any reason, and you want to leave a review on Transpilot, that of course makes me extremely happy, but also helps others find this content. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any question, make sure to write it in the comments below. Now let's go for the questions. Remember, I'm not an immigration lawyer, and I'm telling you, it is so hard to keep up with the changes of this visa. So please take everything with a pinch of salt. Can you go to the office for TIE outside of a region you live? As far as I understand, no. You need to do it in the region where you live, okay? Or you need to get a different, basically you need to do it in the same province, in fact, okay? You need to be in the same province, yes? But in the case, because they will ask for empadronamiento, in most cases, right? Except for the case of Madrid and Barcelona via UGE. Okay, I have an article about this, and of course you have the video with the QR code that I just shared that explains you how to do it, right? So those will be the only cases, and that could be helpful to know. On the digital nomad visa, are there limitations for how many days each year you're allowed to be out of the country, right? So if I'm not wrong, yes, The digital nomad visa, the teleworkers visa, is a temporary residency via the entrepreneur's law, startup law. And now the new Reglamento de Extranjería, or regulation of the law, has been taking effect since May 20th, 2025. Now, if you look at the hierarchy of the laws, there is the main immigration law, which is the 4/2000, which is the main organic law. And then under the law, you have the regulation of the law, which is the bylaw. This is the reglamento. It is lower in hierarchy. Now, they have included a minimum stay of 183 days in a natural year, not in a tax year, like many people think. So it is starts the day that your residency starts, right? And there is a minimum stay of 183 days for the renewal of the residency. Yes. Now, the Supreme Court said that this is illegal, including a minimum stay. So in the previous regulation of the law, it was 180 days and the requirement, and they deleted it. And now the legislator included it again, increased by 3 days, and the Supreme Court ruling is there. So we are in an ambiguous situation. So for the renewal of the visa, if they deny you because you've been less than 183 days, in Spain, you will win the case because of the Supreme Court ruling. Now, this is the legal part, but then, as we said, the tax authorities, let's say the UGE, is gonna look for a lot of documentation, like if you're paying taxes, etc., and all that, right? If you're really living in Spain, and also if you want to comply with the requirements of the long-term residency, if you want to comply with the requirements of applying for a passport, you also have minimum stay requirements that go beyond that 183-day threshold, right? So think about your strategy for the mid-long term in Spain, yes, and not only about the renewal of the visa, maybe, and comply with those minimum stay requirements in order to hit your long-term goals. Okay, so for this, I highly recommend you go in an experienced lawyer who can help you set up the strategy of staying in Spain. Okay. Having owned the same company in Spain since 2005, paying annual wealth and local taxes there, could a right to sell be used in place of a DMV? So you're paying wealth tax for the income that you're generating in Spain, but you're a non-resident in Spain, and you're paying local taxes. So I don't know, but you could, I don't know exactly this situation, but potentially you could have an ordinary work permit to stay in Spain as an entrepreneur, yes, as autonomous of your own company, right? I don't know, something like that. So yes, it could potentially be that way. Remember that for the digital nomad visa, maximum 20% of your income may come from Spanish source. Yes, so that is it. Another one is you could be under a non-lucrative visa if you have the savings, if you have, and this is considered to be passive income. If you're not part of the daily operations of the company, you still have a business, and that could be considered to be a passive income, right? That you can use for your non-lucrative visa. So you have pathways in this situation, and definitely check with an immigration lawyer what your possibilities could be. I will not be using savings to top up since my income requirement is met. But the question is, does it matter if I have low ending balance for my monthly statements? Let's say I have incoming 5K per month, but all those payments are divided to other savings, which makes my ending balance low. Is that a red flag? I don't understand very well. I should see, but I should see. I mean, I don't know exactly what to say. I don't know exactly what to say. To be honest, I don't know exactly, like, if you're depending, I mean, if you're going for a certain amount of period of residency, they will look at the overall, at the global income that you're required to have for that permit, right? But if you have strong monthly variations, your case is less strong, okay, weaker, right? This is what I have in mind, okay? I could be absolutely wrong if that is the situation, but definitely an expert should look at your case just to make sure that there is no extra scrutiny because of that situation, and to make sure that you're over the threshold. But and you say that you are, so I won't see a problem. Hello, I have opened a business and LLC and plan on giving myself, my husband, a job contract when the company is about 10 months old, and then applying. Well, you have to have 12 months minimum, and then applying for the DMV. And when the company is 12 months old, the contract will meet the minimum salary requirements and will be in line with our previous work experience. Are there concerns with this plan? So for business owners of their own companies, lately they're facing more scrutiny, and it needs to be studied. Okay, so this is one of the common ways to apply for, but I'm hearing different feedbacks, and you need to review this with an expert lawyer that understands the latest events on how to frame all this information. Yes, like really, like if I read this, I don't see any red flag or anything. But since you are owner of your own company, you need to be extra careful on how you apply and how you create the documentation. And also, it is very, very important that that company is very, is active, and you show basically that it is not something created ad hoc for the application of the visa, but rather a proper business. This is what they want to see. For self-employed with family, do I need to try to have private health insurance just to apply for the DMV? As far as I understand, if you're applying as an autonomo, you get access to the public healthcare system, and you can put your dependents under your same coverage under the public healthcare system, as far as I understand. And also, your spouse gets full working rights. Okay, even more rights than the main applicant of the digital nomad visa. So the dependent can work fully in Spain. For 100% of the income may come from Spanish customers. What are the requirements for bringing dependent adult children? I explained that in the previous presentation in one slide. Who are still in college and recently graduated but not yet self-sufficient. So please watch the slide that I presented. How many months, years is required in the current job to obtain the DMV via W2? So the company, I think it's 3 months. I think it's 3 months, okay, of your job with the company, your relationship with the company, but the company has to be 1 year old minimum. Yes. It's always 3 months as an employee or as a contract. Basically, the proof of active income as either as an employee, W2, 1099, whatever, has to be for a relation of minimum 3 months, as far as I understand. As a UK LTD company, management consultancy with a portfolio of clients not in Spain, can I only show client contracts that meet the finance threshold? They remain liable for UK for VAT, even in the UK, and corporation tax, and not in Spain. This is very technical. I wish I could answer you, but unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry. But of course, not only you can ask my vetted partners, but also you can join the group, not trying to evade the question, but just to give you a solution as well that will not cost you money. Before going to an expert, you can join the Digital Nomad Visa group and ask here. And when you ask something here, you can toggle this to anonymous post. I always allow anonymous. I can see who is asking, so I can see if it's about or not. But you can ask all these questions, okay, with anonymity, and see what other people have done, okay, and if and gather that information before going to a consultation or hiring someone. It's also one of the things that I would do. My plan was to come on an NLV to get established in Spain or working, then converting to the DMV when we are situated. Is it possible to do a 1 year NLV, then convert to the DMV when I renew? So this is a divided question, because lately people say that going from non-lucrative visa to DNB is not doable. Some people, some experts there, that immigration authorities don't want to see this. Now, this has happened in the past. The controversy is that you should not have been working, let's say remotely, for 3 months during the non-lucrative residency. So it is controversial if you move to DNB because you need those 3 months in advance. So some people say it's not doable as of 2026, but I still need to check that, because other people say that it is doable because they just base their experience on cases that they have had and they were successful, right? And I have successful cases published on Spainguru.es, etc. But this is an ever-changing thing, right? So you need to have a plan B if you plan on this, because it could be that you face some friction on that. Is it possible to do a 1 year in LV? Yes. Yes, that is the situation now. It's unfortunately not clear. I cannot say to you yes or no. Used to be yes 100%, and now I'm hearing some stories that it is not possible. If attempting to apply as a freelancer business owner, and I don't wish to disclose private contracts, with a customer sign, notarize, an apostille letter with client letterhead suffice? I don't know. Unfortunately, I can't answer you that question. I don't know, since I am not one person who is applying every single day for this. I'm not, the lawyer. That those variations in documentations, it would be a bit too much from my side to tell you yes, this works or not. So, fortunately, I cannot help you with that one. So, is it or is not a good time to apply in August? It's not a good time in general. Decisions are rushed, and they're understaffed, and people say that it's not a good time, August, and it's not a good time, Christmas either, especially from a consulate. I have been a sole proprietor in the US, Washington State since 2006, but I don't need to register it officially with the state if I have no employees. With the new December law, do I now need to officially start my own limited company corporation, or can I show my tax statement? Again, unfortunately, my level of knowledge doesn't go that deep. Unfortunately, can't assess you on that. Remember, this is not legal advice. I have a long-standing single-owner corporation, 10 years. I have several degrees in my area of expertise, moving for better time zone management of my customers in the other various countries. Will going to W-2 route and getting Beckham law still be viable? I mean, what I can tell you from your question is that if you're applying as a W-2, definitely you have possibilities of being eligible for Beckham law. If you haven't been a resident of Spain the previous 5 years, and you comply with other requirements, but I don't know exactly how it affects that you are a single owner corporation, and yeah, again, this is an expert applying for this visa every day. Does bank statements need to be apostilled as well? Let me see. That's a good question. Like normally, bank statements cannot be apostilled because they are not an official document. Okay, but you could potentially notarize and then apostille the notarization. Yes. So here we have here. Let's take off this. Current freelance, letter from client, certificate, criminal check, official government, previous certificate, financial documents. Don't need apostille, according to this list. Careful, not legal advice. Not legal advice. Take it with a pinch of salt. Ask in the group, and ask an expert. So I think we made it till the end of the questions. Really appreciate you guys staying until the end. And I will send you the recording very soon. Thank you so much for joining today. If you think that the information that I shared with you today was useful, please leave a review on Trustpilot. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and stay in touch. You can always send me an email, and here's the button for going to Trustpilot if you want to leave a review. And I really appreciate that you made it till the end. For the ones to stay, that stayed, I wish you a wonderful week, and goodbye.